is. And it maybe even starts with this Christmas thing with like all these presents overflowing from the tree, you know? And it's like, this is where American families are happy, when there's $2,600 bags overflowing from underneath the Christmas tree.
That's so, like, I'm telling you, this story is so out of control, because it's now, like, if you just tuned in and started listening, you'd be like, wait a second, so Christmas caused Donald Trump? Like, like I get that Trumpy and Kris Kringle have a similar stature. That's about...
We now bring you Enter the Freud.
Dude, it's so... This is such a weird conversation about, like, Christmas, where everyone is just supposed to get it. And you just play along like you get it. Except because we're psychologists and we have this weird lens where people come and tell you all the facets of how they don't get it.
Yes.
And that not only do they not get it, it's freaking them out.
Yes. And yeah, our lens as psychologists is this kind of like confusing dissonance with the facade that's presented on TV commercials and in the shopping malls this time of year, where everyone gets it and everyone's happy and there's nice sparkling lights everywhere. And then you and me both, what our patients are telling us. And then I think the other thing that we're struggling with right now is because we're psychologists, we look beneath the surface and try to see what's really going on under there. And it starts to get murky and dubious. And we're like, whoa, what the fuck is this thing? I remember as a kid, I probably was 10 years old, and I think most kids when they're young, they just kind of go with the flow of Christmas, and they're taught that Christmas is the super fun time and they're going to get presents, and there's this idea that Santa Claus comes down the chimney and puts presents under your Christmas tree, and you wake up in the morning and open them, and that's super cool. So I like think that I'm kind of like brainwashed into the Christmas magic as a 10-year-old. We were at my aunt's house, and I think I was going to go to the bathroom, and so I went into the back. She kind of has a big house, and I went to the back room, and then I went, for some reason, just to explore around her house, I went into this room, and there's just kind of this dark, lonely room, and my uncle is sitting back there. And I'm like, hey, what are you doing? We talk or something, and then I think I could just kind of tell that he wasn't in the Christmas spirit, so I kind of asked him, and he's like, Christmas is the worst day of the year. And I remember just being like shocked, like, what the hell did he just say? It was like this shocking, confusing revelation. And I was like, what do you mean? Why? He was like, well, everyone's like supposed to be happy and get together with your family, and that's not how it is. That's a lie. And so it's just everyone's lying, and no one really likes each other, and everyone's kind of depressed and pretending they're not, and it sucks.
Oh my God.
And I remember it just like totally was like this slap. It kind of like rattled my childhood innocence, but on the other hand, it sort of like spoke to like the budding intelligence in a young kid. You know, it's like kids know that kids have this wiser, smarter side of them that people normally try to not speak to. And he sort of said this thing that I kind of had a sense that, oh, there is that, and there is truth to that, and it's kind of nice that someone's finally being honest with me.
See, that's a very strange story where you're kind of supposed to... I got in trouble for telling my kid that the elf isn't actually magical, right? That it doesn't travel from the North Pole, and that if you touch it with your hands, it messes up the elf. I don't know what that is. I couldn't understand the story. But at some point, as my son was explaining this, and I could see that he was trying to tell it to me as if it was truth. And I had to say at some point, like, bro, you're 8. That's a little too old to be doing this magical thinking thing. And I don't know why other people are going along with this. Because it's fun. In the morning, you move the elf, and then, you know, it's now hanging from the moose antlers. And then over here, it seems to be like in a ski boot or whatever, right? And I'm like, oh, wow, okay, that's a fun game. But then when you see someone doing this and they seem to be buying into it, well, that disturbed me. And then I felt the need, maybe like your uncle did, to kind of just tell him, yeah, dude, this is like a silly thing. And then he was like, yeah, he'd said to me, yeah, I know, Dad. I'm just going along with it so that everyone else everyone has a fun time.
Yep.
And I was like, but it was so strange because I could see he was conflicted. It was almost like he knew my reality, but he also like knew the other one. He could hold both at the same time. Now he's too old and there's no imagination that the elf is real.
Yep.
But in that moment when I said, "Hey, dude, I can't play this with you," right? That was a weird. It just kind of spoke to that story of your small self.
Well, yeah, it speaks to this. It's probably a paradox. They're probably both true. The magic and wonder of Christmas and the sobering reality. Those are these two different perspectives, and like there's truth to both of them. And your story made me think of when my son was very little. I had this kind of the same question you're asking, and I kind of wondered, what's the best way to do this whole Santa Claus myth with your kids? Because I saw this, kind of the norm in America right now is you deceive your kids into, you try to keep them believing that Santa Claus is real for as long as possible. And I think a lot of kids, maybe most kids, eventually kind of have this like painful disillusionment when they find out that their parents have been really going to great extents to lie and deceive them. And there's kind of like this painful disillusionment. And so I kind of did a lot of studying, and I even found some research done about this. And I concluded, and most of the research that I did concluded, that there is a best way to handle the Santa Claus thing. And here's what it is. It's that you should deal with Santa Claus in the same way you deal with all other like imaginary things. So say, for instance, if you're playing dinosaurs with your kid and you come up and you're like, hey, Jimmy, you want to go eat some little dinosaurs? Yeah, let's do it. And so you're pretending that the dinosaurs talk, right?
Yeah.
And kids can do that. And the kids will pretend the dinosaurs talk. And we have this whole fun game of pretending that the dinosaurs talk. But then you don't later try to trick them and deceive them into thinking, yeah, dinosaurs really can talk. And look, here's the archaeological evidence that shows that dinosaurs really can talk. And then go into this elaborate thing of deceiving them. You don't do that. You just keep it as like, imagination is a really fun thing. And like Santa Claus is going to come down the chimney and bring presents. And isn't that super cool? And they get that it's like this fun, imaginative game that we're creating. And anyways, the research suggests that that's the healthiest thing because it kind of preserves the magical world and the real world all along, as opposed to what parents usually do is they're trying to totally preserve the magical world, and then eventually the magical world dies, and the kid is just left in the fucking barren reality where there's no fucking magic.
Dude, that's depressing. But let me ask you something, because as you were talking, it made me think of the imagery that I used to see when I was driving around as a kid, and I would see these houses, and they had outside their house was these kind of stories, these Christian stories, right? Depicted in Jesus, there's a baby Jesus or something. I don't understand what Christmas is biblically. Do you know?
So the story you usually see is Jesus' birth, because Christmas, and interestingly, historically, December 25th is not the actual day Jesus was born on. We just, a long time ago, when Christians were like raiding and trying to convert other non-Christian groups in like Northern Europe, they decided to like co-opt and take their various pagan holidays, and they're like, oh wow, there's all these people celebrating some birth or something around the winter solstice. All right, let's just tell them that Jesus was born then, and so that'll help make them Christian. And so the whole thing is this massive charade that Jesus actually wasn't even born on December 25th. But
that's so crazy.
I know. But the thing you're talking about is the manger scene, and the story is that Jesus was born in a manger, which is like a horse stable, and that these kings came from far away because there was this prophecy that this great second coming God in a baby form was going to be born. So they came and visited him in this horse stable. And so now people recreate that. They have like the baby Jesus in like a horse trough, like in hay, and then there's animals around and stuff.
Yeah, that's the scene that I remember. But so, listen, this is a terrible thing. Somebody doesn't like what I'm about to say, but it's like, in the same way that it's slightly psychologically inappropriate to deceive children about the magic of Santa too late in development. But then again, it's like this mythical story of religious figures we teach kids early on, and then you tell them it's real, just like dinosaurs speaking. And then you make this like strange archaeological history that supports this kind of fantastic reality where water becomes wine and whatever else, endless amounts of it doesn't matter which religious tradition you look at, they all have these magical stories that go with them, right? People are cured from leprosy if you're in India, since that's a scary thing, and then depending on where you are around the world, you're cured of various ailments, and then riches come to you if you go along with this magical thing. And it's like, why is that in some way normalized, but then like at some point it seems odd to deceive your kids about the magic of Kris Kringle coming down and eating cookies that you've left on the thing.
Yeah, it's a common impulse where parents want to like deceive the kids. And it's probably a well-meaning thing. They just want to keep the magical fun alive. But I think it ultimately serves the opposite purpose, is it ends up being disillusioning, and it leads more to this like disillusioned, there's no magic in the world. The world's a fucking boring, flat, mechanistic place.
Dude, what about when you're just like getting involved in a new romantic relationship and you kind of like try to hold this facade of who you are together as long as possible, and you don't really admit that, hey, we can't kind of go out to dinner every single night because I'm actually starting to go broke, right?
Totally, dude.
And so
Totally.
you kind of like try to lie to keep it going that, oh yeah, like whatever the hell is your presentation, because people come in mostly with an unreal presentation of who they are, right? And it's like in that world, it's so obvious, unless you're just doing some like flagrant catfishing where you're announcing that you're taller than you are. The pictures aren't even you. Like that's insane. But then for normal people who meet under various circumstances, you kind of like immediately have this air about you that's a little more successful. It's a little more friendly and ha funny.
Totally. You're creating a fiction, a romantic fiction.
Yeah. And dude, is there any way that we can get out of this feeling that we're kind of just like, I feel like we're condemning everything. We're just like, ew, look at all this. And I don't like how this feels.
I kind of was doing that until you brought up the romance thing. And now my mind is switching because, and this sort of opens up an interesting question about romance and Christmas. And actually my mind's also connecting to the third thing, is what we were talking about in Hollywood, about like this ego inflation where a person is like, I am a god, look at how amazing I am. It's a similar thing. There's like the fantasy of the best romance, or the fantasy of Christmas, or the fantasy of the hero or the Hollywood superstar, right? And we were kind of condemning all that. But now when you connected it to romance, I'm thinking, I don't know, actually we need that, because like the romance thing, like we want to like get to go into, like get super dressed up and go out to a fancy restaurant and have a glass of wine and kind of like go into that cloud of romantic intoxication and then go make love. And it just sort of, the life is fucking so great when you're in that mode. And I think humans need that, a few times a week.
Wait, so See, this is a very strange distinction. It was almost like unconsciously I felt the need to expose and condemn these other forms, right? These other forms of slight manipulation for whatever the reason, cultural, familiar, whatever that is. I have no idea why there's I just got interrupted by some. What is it saying to me? Well, sorry, it was something just popped up on my screen obscuring this. Well, that interrupted my. Do you know what we were talking about?
Yeah, and I have a thought, so I'll just go, and then it'll help you remember what you're saying. Yeah, we were kind of like aiming to condemn or psychoanalyze or show how humans attempt to like create a fantasy and push the fantasy too far was juvenile. And then just now we were kind of retracting that. But I think there is reason to condemn it. But maybe we need to be specific about what we're condemning. I think the need to create fantasies and romance and idealization images is necessary. But the problem is when we want to like believe in those wholeheartedly. So like you meet a new woman and you fall in love and it's so great, and that space we get into, that ecstatic in love space is so great. But if you believe in it wholeheartedly, you're going to crash that plane. I think the wise way to do it is to get into that space and try to maintain it and try to enjoy it, but never like fall into it hook, line, and sinker and think that this is going to be the salvation and happily ever after. It's like you want to have 1 foot in but 1 foot out, and you want to fully enjoy it, but you don't want to like put all your eggs in that basket and like think that you're now going to be happily ever after.
Dave, you're basically saying like you could write a book that's like how to fall in love and safely.
Totally.
Like as if there's a thing where you could literally write a prescription of here's how to fall in love and like reduce the risk pretty significantly. And it's like how long do you think it takes? How many times do you have to go all in and then get burned before you learn to kind of maintain your feet in both worlds, right? Which is so strange because it literally goes back to my son's 8-year-old depiction to me that, yeah, I know, Dad, and he just showed me that he's in both worlds, right? Yep. He just shows me, yeah, I'm standing in both worlds. And I'm just like, what the fuck? Like, that was weird.
Yep.
Right? Like, this idea that you could do this in a way, because I see the reason why I'm so having a reaction to this conversation is I literally feel like if you go too far towards the identification with magical and unfounded awesomeness, you're like slated for narcissism. And I mean it like internally as a human being. If you start to just attribute too much specialness without any achievement associated with it, like you get a $2,600 handbag when you have no job, you've never had a job. I'm like, dude, what is this? Like that's where the darkness is coming from in myself during this, right? It's like I have this deep kind of awareness that, and it's kind of coming from recently getting on TikTok and Instagram, where it's just like I'm watching these like constant displays of people with this kind of like claims of this is how I got so buff and this is how I made so much money and this is how it's just weird. I'm letting the algorithm feed me anything, and that's what it's feeding me. It's just feeding me a massive dose of narcivicum.
Yes, totally.
I think it's to affiliate.
I think a while back I was talking about the archetype of expansion versus contraction, and we're kind of talking about it now in terms of the magic of Christmas or the magic of new love versus the reality of Christmas or the long-term reality of relationships. So the expansion, contraction, and it's so easily to get addicted to the magic of new love or the magic of Christmas or the magic of individualistic success, and we get addicted to it, and we think that it's going to be this never-ending ascent to glory, and it is a narcissistic thing, and it's an inevitable, like, horrible crash too.
Yeah, that horrible crash is something that I can't quite figure out how we're supposed to, how you're supposed to deal with. It's almost like I see so many avenues headed towards almost promoting that a new part of the new story of the American dream is that you should just boast that you are successful, boast that you have more than you do, start to like just tell a fictional tale about yourself. And I just am wondering, like, there used to be a checks and balances about that in our society. Like, you remember when you were a teenager and everyone went through that phase when people would start to announce that they were something. You're searching for that identity of who you are, and people kind of start saying that they're really good at something, or that at their house they have 3 jet skis, and it turns out it's not true.
Yeah, totally.
Right? Like, you kind of experiment with that, and then I don't know, like, what are we doing if we're promoting that as an actual avenue that then somehow gets reward? And then it's not like I see you and I having problems with that, but I see these young kids getting exposed to that as a reality, and then I hear their tales, and they'll say things like, yeah, but like at least those guys may be fools, but look at all the money they're getting. Like, it validates it somehow.
And that made me think of that. I'm guessing those kids, and I think it's another thing in our culture that fits this same archetypal dynamic, is that parents, I think the parents are training their kids to be this way because the parents are sort of addicted to or in love with some vision that their kid is going to be great. And thus the kid, rather than being loved and accepted for just the ordinary kid he is, the kid starts to like realize, oh, I will be great. I need to be great. And that's where I'll be happy or something. So I think the trajectory probably starts really early with the kids. And it maybe even starts with this Christmas thing with like all these presents overflowing from the tree, you know? And it's like, this is where American families are happy, when there's $2,600 bags overflowing from underneath the Christmas tree.
That's so, like, I'm telling you, this story is so out of control because it's now, like, if you just tuned in and started listening, you'd be like, wait a second, so Christmas caused Donald Trump? Like, like I get that Trumpy and Kris Kringle have a similar stature. That's about... There's a similarity. But
they both have rosy cheeks.
They just need to attach a beard to Trump in this. I need to do that for this clip right here to be like, and so then he's come out to give his presents, right? Like, you remember when Trump was elected and there was a huge amount of people, including my aunt, that believed that we were all going to become millionaires as a result.
Oh.
Did you hear that?
And not first person, but yeah, I heard stories about that.
Yeah, literally, because Trump was president, we were all going to become millionaires.
Yes.
And I was like, that is astounding.
Yeah,
right?
well,
like, he's going to come out with
this connection you've made between Trump and Santa Claus, and people believed that they were all going to be millionaires because Trump somehow offered a promise of glory.
Yeah.
And I think that part of the Christmas spirit and part of Santa Claus for people is offering a similar promise of just a good life where Santa Claus will bring you whatever $2,600 bag you want.
Yeah. You want $1 million? Yeah, here it comes. Whee! Of course. Everyone gets $1 million. And the $1 million somehow maintains its value. Right? Like, even though everyone has it, you all get Lamborghinis. Everybody gets... nobody realized like you don't get very much with $1 million if you start like buying houses and Lamborghinis.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. It's just
it doesn't matter.
It's the fantasy of the age of abundance and the land where milk and honey flows, and we're all happy, and Shangri-La, and the it's a old archetypal fantasy that that haunts us. And back to the good side of it, and thank God that we have this alluring fantasy that drives us with passion and hope and creativity and insanity. The insanity that is exhibited in pursuit of the fantasy is kind of a great part of this nutty American and human enterprise.
I wish it was always great, right? But as we look at the strange pathology that associates with, I don't know why. You got to stop me, man. I keep just gravitating towards Christmas. I'm like the Grinch, dude. I realize it, right? Your uncle was the Grinch, and I'm the Grinch. Because I keep thinking about Christmas, and now I'm like, dude, why does everyone become suicidal during this kind of a holiday spirit? Why are there more people who kill themselves during this time?
Right.
And
yeah. What is that? What is?
I need to be stopped.
What is?
Don't let me.
Well, what?
Just tell me no.
It's still a good question. That's a thing. Is like something happens around Christmas, and not everyone, but some people are hit with a painful loneliness or a painful hopelessness, and I think it's the contrast of the fantasy of warmth and connection and intimacy in contrast to the reality when a person doesn't feel that.
But so look, if we're really onto something, then wouldn't it be the case that when all of these people who expect Trump to come down the chimney and deliver us free from all of the heathens and the millions that we is our birthright, when it doesn't come, are people going to start killing themselves?
Or either kill themselves, or more likely, they're going to start raging at the person who they think is responsible for them not getting their millions.
Aha, okay, I like that. It seems much more realistic than like mass suicide due to the law. Although, who knows? Someone may freak out so bad when they realize it isn't coming. Because I gotta say, it's not coming, right? Like
No, it's not coming, and there's 3 different responses pop into my head. I'm sure there's more than this, but here's the 3 that pop into my head. Well, 2 of them are kind of this interesting psychoanalytic idea, which I'll share because it's kind of interesting. In psychoanalysis, they really focus on the one thing I like about the psychoanalytic world is they see the like brutal animal inside every human. And when the brutal animal inside every human doesn't get what we want, the response is aggression, according to the psychoanalysts. And the aggression is either going to be turned outward. So if you don't give me what I want, porn, I'm fucking going to come attack you. And if I don't get what I want, I'm going to find someone who's responsible for this, and I'm going to attack them. And the Trump supporters think that it's the Democrats that did it, so they attack them. And when Trump didn't win the election, they go raid the Capitol because they're like, fuck this is not okay, we're going to attack, right? And the liberals think it's the Trump supporters and the racists and the capitalists, and so they go on attack mode. Okay, but that's just the first thing that people can do when they don't get what they want, and that's aggression turned outward. The other thing that can happen is aggression turned inward, which is you attack yourself, and that's what leads to depression and suicide. It's like, I'm a horrible person. And so the anger is turned inside, and those are the people that end up killing themselves, or at least just get super depressed and hopeless. And when you're depressed, you just lose all motivation, and you're just like, and you're sinking into depression.
Dave, before you answer the third one, could you explain, like, why is this, both of them are a cognitive distortion? It's like they're an attribution error. Because in both cases, you individually are not the source of this discrepancy in the world. The fact that you thought milk and honey was coming, or in this case, you thought millions of dollars are coming to you. Turns out it's wrong. And then it's not because you're faulty, right? but it's somehow the environmental story, the envelope from which you were born is somehow distorted. There's something going on in the same way that if you said the problem was the Democrats, well, that's also an attribution error, right? You're attributing the error within these people who you don't even really know who they are, right?
Yep.
It's a group of people that you can't even really point to. Like if you ask me, well, who are the Democrats? Well, there's a couple people on TV, and then it's some guys down the block who have a sign that supports it, right? Like that's who Democrats are? What the fuck is this, right? Like as simplified as those two answers were, sorry to do this again, but here we are. I'm just saying, like, well, what is actually going on? What is the thing that truly disturbs us, our minds? Why are we disturbed? Is that
Why are we disturbed when we don't get what we want?
Yeah, why are we disturbed when it becomes obvious that what was slated for us isn't coming?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think we're disturbed because we foolishly and immaturely invest all our hopes in happiness in life on getting the thing that we want. And whether that's the millions that we thought Trump was going to give us, or whether that's the happiness because we met our soulmate and we thought that soulmate was going to make us happy, or whether it's I thought I was going to win the lottery, or I thought I was going to like get into med school and become a doctor and be rich and be happy. And I put my hopes on happiness for the future into something, and then when I don't get that, it's like, I can't survive without that. And like you can't survive, so you have to blame someone and go on attack or kill yourself.
Yeah. Well, okay. So that does seem pretty self-explanatory. Do you remember the third thing that you were going to point out?
I do remember, and now I have a third and a fourth. And maybe I'll separate it into this. The first and the second are both immature responses.
Okay.
Like blaming other or blaming self. And then the next two are both mature responses. And one is, I'll call it, I don't know what words. It could be tragic versus romantic, or like hopeful versus equanimity. So the mature responses are you accept the fact you don't get what you want, and it sucks, but like whatever, I'm going to have to deal with it. And I can either deal with it by getting motivated and restarting and working really hard to find a new path towards maybe I can get what I want.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know, I'm tempted to say that's the less mature, but I don't think so. I think that there's this paradox where I'm not sure which one of these is more mature, or maybe you need to have both, I'm not sure. But if I had to say one is less mature, this is the less mature one, because it's still a little bit a belief that I'm going to get to the land of milk and honey.
Yeah.
And then the fourth one, if that was romantic, this next one is tragic, is you accept that you're not going to get to the land of milk and honey, and that's okay, but you still can like live life, and you can still have an okay life, even though you're not going to be famous, or you're not going to get the $1 million, or you're not going to win the lottery or whatever, and you can kind of like accept that.
Whoa. I want there to be an end with a fifth one where I become like an unusually late blooming rap star, even though I'm white. I've never rapped before in my life, right? Dude, I see you laughing because you think it's funny, but I need this. I need a dream. I want to become forget rapping. I want to become somehow like the latest ever recognized MMA superstar, even though I don't train MMA. But I need a fantasy, bro.
Well, yeah, and my option number 3 is you're still committed to a fantasy. You're talking about it, and you're not going to really work for it. That feels a little bit more like option number 1 and 2. But option number 3, which is mature, is you're still going to try to get a fantasy, so you're going to work on it. Like you and me have a fantasy that, we can do this podcast, or we can do this YouTube channel, and if we work at it, eventually it's going to get more and more popular. And then, we're going to be rich and famous, and we're going to have our heads engraved on Mount Rushmore because we're so great. But we're like working at it, so it like gives us a mountain to climb, you know?
That's fair. Okay, that's fair, right? But so it's almost like because this is the Christmas episode, I'm still waiting for. It's almost like I can't finish the episode without somehow a kind of a new promise of being delivered. The new Santa Claus. Look, Santa Claus clearly isn't coming because there is no Santa, but Trump was the next Santa, and now Biden is not a very good Santa Claus.
No,
I do
dude.
not want his.
I don't think anyone
him
believes
coming
in
down
the
the
Biden
chimney.
Santa Claus anymore.
Dude, I don't want Biden like fumbling down the chimney in or whatever he's doing, right? With
I
his
think
Secret
the
Service
reason
crew.
Biden has failed so much is the Democrats were so fucking desperate to get Trump out that they were just going to take the first motherfucker they could and just stick him in there because they were just like anyone but Trump. So they like picked like a super senile dude. And it was like, oh my God, couldn't you find someone who wasn't senile? Jesus.
Dude, this is not a very good Christmas story, Dave. Like, I want there to be.
Hold on, but you want? I think we kind of have got a Christmas promise for Christmas hope. So let me see if I can articulate. I think we've already said this, but let me just be clear: is that humans have this fairly juvenile obsession or addiction and a desire for magic or fantasy or to be delivered to Christmas bliss or romantic bliss or riches.
Yes.
That they want that. And it's not going to happen. And when it doesn't, they fucking crash and burn. That's this thing we're struggling with. But we've identified that, if parents teach their kids like we were talking about, or adults can come to this more like balanced, I even want to use the word integral or dialectical, where like there is magic in the world, and you can go out and have super romantic, erotic evenings with your lady, or you can find new projects that are really fun and hopeful. As long as you sort of have like a 1 foot in, 1 foot out, dialectical, integral, more mature way, that there is a way. And I sort of feel like our country, if we could sort of get to that level of listening to other people, and we can be attached to our ideas, but not too attached, and we still need to open. I sort of think that we could, and I almost want to say, hopefully we will eventually rise up to that level that we could get above this kind of juvenile, bickering, whatever, attachment to my $2,600 bag thing.
Dude, okay, so that was like an amazingly well thought out, grounded response to this question, because it's almost like, so when you start to say magical, oh, there is a magic, I'm like, oh, really? So astrology is the next thing? And then we should also, let's imagine other magical things, like all birds are drones. That's a fun magical thing, right? And unless you've shot a bird with a BB gun and or eaten a bird before, or like seen a bird in a cage in the zoo, it's like, dude, it's so obviously not a drone, right? Like, well, in a way, but it's like astrology, obviously, when you start to imagine, like, really? So guys just sat around, they stared at the stars, and then somehow they literally had such an amazing, vast expanse of intelligence that they categorized all the stars into kind of a place from their one position on the planet, by the way. The people who were looking at it, they were from on their one spot, and then they kind of created this whole thing, which is why there's Eastern astrology versus Western astrology, like you see from Richard Tarnas, which, you know what? I just realized this is totally screwed up what I'm doing. Like, I don't want to go down that. It's just unpacking way too much into the world of mysticism and like magical understanding of the world outside of the reasons that we all look at, like through a different lens entirely.
Well, but I thought that the question you were kind of wrestling with is like, is there magic in the world? And I think that's a super interesting question that we could really go on all kinds of different journeys in different directions about. But the very simple, clear answer is that the world is amazingly magical all over. I was just having a discussion with people about snowflakes and how every snowflake is different. And you remember when, maybe you didn't do this because you were in India, but most kids in America, when they're in their first grade teacher gives them a black piece of construction paper and goes outside when it's snowing, and the snowflakes fall, and you look at them and they're fucking amazing, and everyone is different. Or go like the birds, you talking about birds, go bird watching, and the different birds or flowers or music or art or just the amazing magical mystery, just like of everything. It's like it obviously is magical.
Okay, I like that as I'm kind of looking for some kind of a cap to put on this, almost for my own anxieties.
What's your anxiety about?
I have some weird anxiety about this like holiday, like the arrival of this, and I can't quite put my finger on it.
Huh.
But now it's manifested into I want this episode to end with some level of like
Cure for that anxiety.
Yeah, I literally do. I have anxiety from this conversation.
Well, I think that everyone I think honestly everyone has anxiety all the time about everything, and especially about holidays, and especially about getting together with family, and we all have anxiety, and honestly that's fine to have anxiety, and like fucking have fun being playful and silly with your son, and like go fucking have a snowball fight and like look at snowflakes, you know?
Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. Way to bring that home, because I just like to bring a level of internal disturbance to the discussion.
We're out of time. We got to stop, which I'm disappointed in, because it would be fun to try to like rip open the anxiety and dissect it and figure out what it's about.
Yeah, definitely. That would have been fun. But okay, so the next time we revisit this, it'll be 2022, man.
Oh,
New Year's resolutions
when are you leaving
and the
for
whole
Montana?
thing. What's that?
When are you leaving for Montana?
Oh, on Friday.
Cool.
Or Saturday morning. And so, yeah, I'll just be there for the next 2 weeks, man.
Yeah, I'm organizing a ski trip on a New Year's weekend, that weekend of New Year's.
Oh, wow.
And there's a chance we might come out to Big Sky, so I might even get to see you, but I'll let you know.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because right now there's not enough snow. Just make sure you check in, because...
Yeah, I'm going to try. I got a few people, but I'm going to try to go where there's the most snow. And Tahoe yesterday got 40 inches, dude.
Oh, wow.
So I'm going to try to lobby to go to Tahoe, but who knows where we'll get dumped between now and January 1st. So
Exactly, yeah. Yeah. Okay, cool, man.
All right, dude.
Well, until next time.
All right.
Okay, later.